Hello, welcome back to Real World Boating. Had a couple questions from friends about the the BMSs, that how to hook them up, how to hook up a BMS. It was a little bit. I didn't go over very much detail in the last video about the BMS when I built the battery, so I wanted to go over that a little bit more. And how to do that, and specifically I had a question about the BMSs and the cells and the rate of discharge. In particular, Ben, who owns the sailboat that I talked about in the last video, who has that 500 amp bow thruster. He had some questions when we talked about it on the docks there just a couple days ago about why it wouldn't run his bow thruster and some different things like that. And I did say in the last video that it all depends on the BMS, and that's not entirely completely accurate. It depends on two things. It does definitely depend on the BMS, because this BMS that I used last time only has a constant discharge rate of 100 amp continuous. This BMS right here has 150 amp continuous discharge rate. This little BMS right here has a continuous discharge rate of the same of this one, of 100 amp continuous discharge. And this one actually has a peak, at least according to the spec, of 600 amp discharge. This little tiny BMS right here, especially compared to these other ones. I do think that it couldn't handle it for very long, just because it was overheat. It would overheat. The MOSFETs are they don't have any sort of a heat sink like this one and this one right here. Big. That's what the aluminum plates on our heat sinks for the MOSFETs themselves, to dissipate the heat. So this one definitely couldn't handle it for very long, especially if you were already running at 100 amp discharge for a while, and then peaked up to or close to 100 amp discharge, and then peaked up to 600. It would be hot already probably, and then probably destroy the BMS by doing it too much. It would be really easy, and it would just shut down, and you wouldn't get any power out of that battery at all. Just to be clear, these BMSs are labeled, and I'll do some close-up shots and put in here. And they're labeled B minus, this one in particular, B minus, C minus. And this one is labeled, the two that I have on this one right here is B minus and C minus as well. This one also has a B plus and C plus. This one, it doesn't say C plus, it does say B plus on this larger one here. You should be able to see the large B plus right there. And then it does have the B minus right here for this plate right here. And it does have the C minus labeled right here for this one up here. So this has the same labeling. And this one also has Bluetooth. And there's the antenna as well for the Bluetooth transmitter, the temperature sensor, so it does have a low temperature shutoff. I really like this one. It has very thick copper plates for all of the connections. It is 100 amp hour continuous duty, and I feel comfortable that this one could actually do 150 amp hour continuous duty discharge. And I feel comfortable with these thick plates. It actually could handle that that load at 100 ampere without frying it out. So this is a really good BMS. I like it quite a bit. I'll put some links on the video so you can find it without much trouble. I actually bought two of these. I like the first one so much I got a second one. And it was in the $70 range. But I did have to buy the Bluetooth and the I guess just the Bluetooth connection separately. It came with the temperature and the Of course, the wire connections for that. So just the Bluetooth was separate on that one. So the cells definitely matter as well, because these cells that I built in here only have 100 amp hour or 100 amp continuous discharge as well. So the cells will limit the amount of discharge. They do have cells that have 200 amp continuous discharge, and you can put this in packs. So this is 4 cells for the 12 volt battery, and so there are 3.2 amp cells for the nominal voltage, or 3.2 volt cells for the nominal, and 100 amp, 135 amp hour, and 100 amp continuous duty. So if I were to do another one that was just exactly the same as this one and connect them together parallel, I would be able to get 200 amp hour discharge out of the 12 volt battery, and if I do a third one, 300, and so on. So I could use these cells to create a 500 amp or higher discharge battery. I would just have to have 5 stacks of those for these particular cells. There are other cells that have higher amp discharge rates individually than these ones, and that's what I'll be using when I build the cell. So I'll be using some 200 amp continuous discharge cells, and so I'm planning on building a 600 amp continuous discharge battery. His is 24 volts, so it'll be 24 volt 600 amp continuous discharge, but it'll be based on cells that are double the capacity of these, so I will have to put them in series and parallel to get that higher discharge, continuous duty discharge, to run the 500 amp bow thruster for his boat. So I went over this one right here already. Like I said, the B minus, the B plus, and the C minus. The B plus was not on this one here, so that is the positive side of the battery, and sometimes it's labeled C plus. Yeah, this little one right here, this corner right here is labeled B plus / C plus, so that is the positive side of the battery, or the positive charger of the battery, or both can go through that. You don't have to have the charging side of the battery go through that, but you probably should, just because the BMS is regulating the amount of charge that you're putting in this battery for that. This BMS right here, it can actually just shut off the negative side of that battery instead of the positive, but you should probably use the wiring in the BMS. I don't know exactly how this is wired. You could probably just skip it, but I would definitely want to check it to make sure that the charging did shut off. And usually lithium chargers will shut off themselves after your battery's all charged up, so it wouldn't be necessary if you're using that type of charger also. It just depends on your charger a little bit, and how you have it wired up. So I'll do some close-ups of this so you can get some really clear pictures of these here, and see what I'm doing as far as that goes and how to wire it up, just based on the BMSs themselves. And then typically when you buy that, although a lot of the stuff that comes from China, and virtually all these BMSs come from China, the directions are a little bit unclear. I'm sure you've probably experienced that before, where you get something and it's just a lot of stuff is lost in translation, or they just assume maybe that since you're buying it, you know what to do with it. But sometimes that is not true. You're a little bit unfamiliar with how to connect things up. So I'll go over that, so hopefully that'll make it clear, and yeah. I will. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.